Hi there, it's Cheryl Durst with IIDA, and I am very honored to be with Angie Lee, FIIDA, AIA, a newly inducted member of IIDA's College of Fellows. Let me tell you a little bit about Angie before we jump into our interview. She was chosen as a fellow because of her amazing and stellar and inspiring personal story and her career. Angie's candidate statement was extremely empowering, and her publications and recognition are top tier. Angie's service on the IIDA International Board, she's currently our president-elect, has been astonishing and visionary. In a letter of recommendation, Edwin Beltran, FIIDA, says, through inspiration, education, and advocacy, Angie has used interior design as an activist platform to pursue her call to service, and in doing so, has helped to frame design as a positive and actionable change agent that can be a part of the solution to address some of the world's most pressing challenges: social equity, equality, inclusion, climate change, sustainability, and collective civility, to name a few. That's quite a charge, Angie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Cheryl?
I'm great. Hey, can we start with you telling us a little bit about your life and about your career? So let's do a little mix of personal and professional.
Okay, let's do it. Well, I started out with parents intending for me to go into medicine or music or both. You know, that's kind of a classic arc for a lot of Asian Americans. And I rebelled by focusing on my other kind of creative passions with drawing and writing, and discovered architecture accidentally through a high school counselor. So she said, you know, I hid in this kind of technical drawing class in high school. I didn't want to take home ec, and I didn't want to take additional math classes, which I wasn't very fond of. And she said, well, have you ever considered architecture? And I said, what is architecture? I had no idea. And it really appealed to my parents because I think they thought it was engineering. And that seemed to be a reputable kind of course of action for them. And little did they know that it's very similar to, you know, like an apprenticeship career trajectory where you're making very little at the beginning, and they were astonished at that kind of surprise at the after graduation. So I kind of backed into it, but it did eventually grab me as something really unique and really something that resonated with me as a creative.
Brava to that counselor for suggesting that. And did you feel at any point that you had to justify your career to your parents? I mean, we know what parental pressure and parental expectations can be like. Did you feel that you had to justify your career choice at any point?
At the beginning, I was literally, I mean, this is years and years ago, almost 30 years ago, I was making $18,000 a year. So yes, I had to justify to my parents what the heck I was thinking at the beginning. I had no idea it was going to be like that, but they said, you know, stick with it. They were never ones to allow me to give up anyway. And they did understand that it would take time. And it did. And I feel like it paid off, and they see that.
That's awesome. How have you felt that you've intentionally impacted the world of design? You're a mentor, you're a teacher, you're an incredible design thinker. How do you feel that you've impacted the world? I know we all have thoughts and opinions, and your impact has been stellar, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you've impacted design.
Well, I kind of impacted design whether I wanted to or not. I always shook things up, and you hear other people who occupy the margins say this as well, like just being in the room is sort of a shakeup. Mm-hmm. And I think when I started to intentionally embrace that kind of impact was when I stopped apologizing for it. So You know, there is something to be said about learning your own story and kind of shedding the lessons that were thrust upon you and kind of discovering your own truth. It's a very kind of overstated word, but it's one that's important to not lose sight of. Understanding how to analyze it, retell it, and stay true to it is some of the hardest work that really everybody has in front of them. So when you figure that out, you help others in terms of how to mentor them with advice that serves them specifically in a tailored way that's not like a one size fits all, fit into society kind of model.
So knowing your own story and telling your own story, you know, we both know that happens over time, right? Mm-hmm. You weren't able to do that at the probably ripe age of 22, 23. Right. So what advice would you give young designers, young architects, kind of early on about finding their voice and telling their story and having the courage to do that?
Right. I think, you know, forgive yourself. Remember to do that often and early, because, you know, a lot of times you're going to find yourself criticizing yourself too intensely, and all that, you know, beating up of your own self-esteem doesn't really serve you in the end. So if you are a young designer today, it's a tough time to be a young designer, an experienced designer. Hold on to the experiences that you're going through, even though you don't find that you have the courage to advocate for yourself or others even right now. Just remember what you're going through and remember to use that to fuel your empathy later. It will get better. It just, you know, it takes a little bit of stick-to-itness. So yeah, that's kind of the best advice that I took with me at the beginning, whether I liked it or not, but it did serve me later in life.
You are kind of a one-woman force, a force of nature, but we all know that you don't get to this place alone. What role has allyship? You know, who are your allies and who has supported you on your journey, or what mentors would you like to take the opportunity to give a shout out to? And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the value of mentoring and being mentored, and then also the value of allyship.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny. I think allyship and mentorship is incredibly important. But there's also something else that I discovered actually with one of your talks with Robin Claravia from Gensler when she talked about sponsors. And that was kind of an aha moment for me. I had many sponsors along the course of my career, but few mentors until later when, you know, I consider Gabrielle, even she's maybe offended to think that she's a mentor for me, but no, she's not that much older than me. But I do find that she has been the closest thing to a mentor that I can think of. You know, I have a very high bar and I tend to put people on pedestals, and she's kind of up there, precariously perched. But the notion of allyship does happen more frequently, and I think with less kind of hoops to jump through. So in terms of mentorship, you know, I'm trying to find a better way to do that for others and not pass along, you know, advice that really is not meant for me, for women, for people of color, for working moms, etc. So there is something about allyship where you can find somebody who just finds some newly found sympathy because they kind of understand you as a person, and you can find that that helps them grow as well. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to have these connections. I mean, you can label them many different ways: sponsors, allies, mentors, but just to have these kind of positive connections to help people grow and to help yourself grow.
Let's talk a little bit about the work that you do at your firm. Can you share with us a project that was maybe transformative to your career, that changed your course or your practice or how you thought about design?
That's a really tricky one. I feel like literally, and this is not a cop out, but every project changes. It really does. I learned so much, and I feel like it's impossible to be jaded in this industry because every client is so completely unique and unpredictable. And as soon as you feel like you know what's going to happen, then that rug gets yanked out from under you. But I can point to some highlights when I designed the New York Stock Exchange open outcry trading floor. This is going on maybe 15 years ago now. That really was an eye-opener for me in terms of how so many things were evolving so rapidly. This almost all male population in a sort of a mode of trading that was clearly being taken over by technology, but this kind of ritual and celebration and just kind of the sheer audacity of this kind of symbolism of a New York institution was really incredible for me. And I was doing that all while I had a very young child and just barely keeping my head above water. But that was when it kind of cemented the fact that, I kind of knew that this is where I belonged, whether I fit in or not. I loved it. It was just, it was just hard to sort of top that in terms of knowing you have impact, you have this kind of like, a lot of glamour associated with it, but just kind of these small yet large moves, making it better even for those traders on the floor. They're always standing and we gave them a seat. Little things like that were kind of fun to kind of tackle.
That story, Angie, for me also points to what a lot of members of IIDA, right? We are over 80% of our members are women. And so there you are, deep immersed in work with this venerable institution of the New York Stock Exchange, but you're also immersed in the venerable institution of motherhood. So I'm going to ask that inevitable question that we always get asked as women. How do you and how have you achieved balance? And I'm implying that that's possible.
And this is how I feel like I need to be a better mentor going forward, is with some honesty. I have not found balance and I continue to look for it. I do think that it's possible, but there needs to be a redefinition of success. Mm-hmm. And understanding that this whole phenomenon of imposter syndrome and perfectionism is a real killer. Like, it really just weighs you down. And that is something that I'm relieved to be learning about in depth. And the fact that it's being a little bit more kind of out there as a topic that's being shared has been incredibly helpful. So, I think just exactly what you're doing is sharing stories and connecting people and communicating is how you find balance. Helping other people know that it's okay to not win Mother of the Year, which I've never done.
Yeah, I don't have that mug.
I don't have that mug. So there is no mug or medal. I mean, I feel like we've been, especially in New York, treating parenthood as almost like a contact sport. So it's always like, why did I put myself through that?
As women and women of color, we keep showing up in places that weren't built for us or designed for us, or where we haven't traditionally been seen or heard. How do you talk about this at your firm? So you're leading some initiatives in your firm around equity and inclusion. And so how are you having those conversations internally within your firm and then externally, even with clients?
Yeah, I can't take credit for leading these initiatives. These were all grassroots, based on the absence of stories regarding women, the LGBTQ plus community, and people of color. And I'm just a big loudmouth when it comes to supporting them and giving them an alliance with the partnership at the company and being the voice in the room when they're not there. And then sharing my own stories, which is really hard to do because it puts you in a very kind of exposed and vulnerable spot, but that's how it begins. So starting to carve out larger and larger safe spaces for those stories to dwell and not be rejected or sort of, you know, turn the conversation into a kind of a straightening out of the narrative and, you know, kind of a whitewashing of the narrative. Yeah. It is something that just happens by telling the small kind of intimate, innocuous stories first. Let's start with food, you know, or music or dress and culture, what you did over the weekend or what your parents like to do, your traditions. So sharing those small, intimate, personal details is important. And then you get stronger, you get more elastic, and then you reach for more ambitious, I guess, game-changing conversations.
What about IIDA? You've been on the international board, you're now our president-elect. What role has IIDA played in your life and in your career?
So IIDA has given me a community I never expected to have. And being an interior designer and an architect, you know, the kind of the distance between those partners is unexpected. So having some backup, no, let me say having a lot of backup, yeah, has been a lifeline. So I can't speak highly enough of having connections across the industry, across the globe, across this country, and seeing how everybody else is experiencing their own version of what I'm going through as an interior designer within a larger architectural firm, or just, you know, a large interiors practice that's doing things in a slightly different way. There's so much learning and sharing and inspiration happening that I don't think I would have thrived if I had not found IIDA.
It once upon a time was said that the internet was going to be the death of a lot of things, right? The death of reading, the death of books and movies, but also supposedly the internet sounded the death knell for associations and membership associations, that we would find our communities in a lot of other ways. And we certainly have, right? Through Instagram and Facebook. But do you still feel that there is value in having professional membership organizations, organizations that kind of give you that common lexicon with other designers? Talk a little bit about what community and belonging specifically means to you personally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the bonds I formed with all the IIDA leadership members on the board and people across the country, when I could go to Miami, for instance, in person to, you know, participate in the design awards. All of those in-person interactions have so much more staying power than the virtual ones. Not to downplay or downgrade the virtual and remote efforts. Those have been amazing. It's just that the in-person has, you know, like when you're reading a real book with paper, there's a different kind of cognitive impression on the gray matter. And I think the same thing happens when you're socially interacting with people over a glass of wine, spending a day or two in a unique location with real innovators and design thinkers, and having debates and reading the room, reading the body language, and learning so much in a kind of 360 sensory way. It's crucial. I think that the supplemental is going to continue with hybrid and virtual, but the in-person, I think, is absolutely essential.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up some really good points about kind of that human glue, that human stickiness, that quality to the relationships that we have. with regard to membership itself, what is it meaning to you right now, particularly in this moment where we are living hybrid lives? We are living through some social and civil unrest. We and our organizations around us are focused on equity and inclusion. What does membership mean to you right now?
Membership at IIDA means that you have shared values in a way that, I'm going to just explain this poorly, but it's unique to IIDA. I think because it doesn't have as much kind of certification value as like an AIA membership does. I think it has more to do with the kind of content that we share and the values that we're trying to push forward. So having those, those letters behind your name on your business card or your email signature, I think is almost like a moment of pride and respect for the purpose of design. So, it goes deep into the why we're doing this. And I think it's ever expanding in terms of how we're, increasing the radius of influence and grabbing more people to include in that circle. So membership for IIDA, I think, is very special. It is kind of both very specific, but also broad and, both intellectual and actually spiritual. I don't think you realize that you're a spiritual leader, but you are, Cheryl.
I love how you said pride in the purpose of design. That was beautifully stated. Do you think that kind of in this, I hesitate to say post-pandemic, it's kind of, we're still in that through line, but in this world and moment that we're in now, do you think there's a different regard for design, specifically interior design?
Yes. Even though the cost of plywood is doubled or tripled, everybody's redoing their homes because you're understanding, sometimes painfully, how important your interior environment is. Design matters. It can transform your mood, your psychology, and depression is on the rise. Productivity is also on the rise in a weird way.
That is ironic, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I think the importance of interiors and design and experience is everybody's focusing on that and kind of reevaluating some basic fundamentals of what they're doing and why. Mm-hmm. And that all ties back to what we do as a profession.
As you think about your leadership in IIDA, what is a message that you would like to have for particularly young designers who are entering this industry at a chaotic time? And I suppose any time is a chaotic time, but what advice do you have for young designers in this moment?
I think some good advice is always to be curious and not let the kind of discouragement from the conventional track of what you're supposed to do and check the boxes at a certain time deter you from thinking that you're making or not making progress, you're making a difference, or you're learning. So again, I look back to some of my bleakest, earliest experiences in architecture offices, and I use those to this day to understand, what I'm capable of, what I can endure, and what I learned from those kinds of models that you don't want to replicate. You kind of know exactly what to do sometimes by what you want to avoid copying. So I think understanding, tension or kind of stressful, chaotic situations is also a teacher. So use everything that's offered.
Great advice. That's great advice. So when you're not working and you're not focused on IIDA, what are some fun things that you do? I mean, I certainly see you on Instagram, but what outside of the day-to-day provides some meaning and connection and, dare I say, fun for you?
Right. I think going back to all the sort of mundane activities in the past, like going to the movies, going to dinner, taking a walk, those are actually some highlights of my weekends and evenings, but I value them in a different way. It's in a completely different light. And this notion of self-care that I've been, I don't know, maybe rolling my eyes about, I'm taking far more seriously these days. That is something that gives me great pleasure because I know that I'm growing as a person. I know that it is important, that it's important that I do it and take it seriously. So I'm in a kind of interesting spot right now, personally, understanding how to take care of myself.
That's good. No, that's good. And it's, self-care is not selfish. So, that's such a good lesson that I think many of us are learning. So last question. What are you excited and optimistic about? And it can be personal, it can be professional, it can be a combination thereof. But what are you most excited and optimistic about in this moment?
Well, I'm excited about a lot of this sea change regarding, well, appropriately regarding climate happening on a broad scale. And I am optimistic that it's gonna be adopted by the right, like, gigantic organizations to start making the change fast enough. We just don't have a choice. So this is not my usual mantra, but it has become a huge focus. So that's what I'm looking at. And it affects all the other issues that we're passionate about in terms of equity and, all the other topics that we're so worried to resolve.
Is there a good role for design to have a voice in the issues around climate change?
Yeah, it's always to ask the question or push the issue and not be afraid that the client's going to get turned off or the market's not going to respond. I think we have to take lessons from our kids, that kind of energy is to, make ourselves wake up and start taking action. And, we've already started to get into that kind of area of discomfort, and we can get good at it as long as we keep practicing. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Getting good at discomfort is definitely good advice. Well, thank you, Angie Lee, for your intrepid leadership. You're fearless and intentional and brilliant, and I adore you. So thank you so
Cheryl,
much.
Thank you for those kind words, and I adore you too. I admire you so much. Thank you. Thank you. This is great.